Hi guys, welcome to today's session. We're going to be following on pretty much identically to how we finished the previous session. So last time we were working on this sort of section of the piece, developing the bottles mostly, a little bit starting to get into the ham. What we want to do this session is try to get a reasonable amount of the rest of the piece in. Perhaps not so much of the background, that'll probably be what we do next session, so we'll be sort of working from the background forward from next session onwards, but going to try to get the kind of major elements of the foreground blocked in. So the silver cup, the knife, parts of the plate that haven't been worked on yet, the napkin, these papers, and these other knives as well. So that's going to be a focus. Again, we're just using kind of a mixture of different charcoal tools. So you'll see at times I'll be using charcoal pencils. I'll then be working over them with softer willow charcoal that I've got nitrum. I've got brush and eraser as well. So it's going to be that kind of loose approach that we've generally been working with since we began. Just starting to define these shapes a bit more. So things like the bottles and this silver cup. I'm thinking about symmetry as I'm working from them. But then the reflections in something like the silver are going to be a lot more varied. So some parts are going to be quite brightly lit, some parts are going to go very dark. And it's not going to be the same on both sides. So how they're relating to the scene, relating to the light, it's going to vary. So working the willow charcoal over the compressed helps spread it. It's sort of like a bit of a spreading device, or it's a little kind of random trick I've developed as a method. But I want you to try to explore and find your own little methods as well. You can obviously copy anything I do in the video, but also give things a go yourself. So just using a brush there, then I'm able to go back in and use the eraser to kind of work negatively, or in the negative, just to erase. Highlights back in, the object that's shiny, that's obviously going to be necessary, and then we're just going to sort of explore through and find how much we have to lighten things back off. We obviously have to bear in mind, because this is going to be a mixed media piece, we are going to be doing a bit of work with laying paint over subsequently or eventually in the piece. So that's going to bring brighter tones. So we kind of think about that a bit in our general tone management. It's not too bad, I think, as a block-in. This handle of the knife seems to be a sort of lighter texture, probably like a bone handle, as it's a classical painting. And the top edge of it's quite flat, but then the side edge is darker, so we want to try to build that into our erasing. So the top plane of the knife I'll erase more than the side plane of the handle. that's both the knife and that vessel, that drinking, sort of silver drinking vessel, reasonably well developed. We're not pushing for a complete finish. It's going to be longer spent on the piece before that's the case. It's getting there. So with the ham, I would say we want just go back and sort of re-soften it. It's maybe a little bit scratchier than is ideal, and then work back into that, which we're going to do a few times with this ham. It's one of the central aspects of the image. So once again, I'm spreading the compressed charcoal using the softer charcoal, the willow charcoal. So it's a good way to get a kind of general balance between darker and lighter tones, because you kind of know that the compressed charcoal is going to be darker than the willow charcoal generally, while still retaining a reasonable amount of control over the compressed charcoal, because the only issue with the compressed charcoal is if it kind of gets put in the wrong place and it goes too dark, it can be a bit of a pain to deal with. So just about there with most of the stuff going on. This left-hand hedge, so it just leaves the foreground elements, which are mostly quite light. It's got a little bit going on with this paper, the shadow it casts down on this tabletop. Most of these bits I would probably be inclined to just use the willow charcoal, because we don't want these tones to go quite so dark. And we're just focusing on the shadows on and cast by this paper. It's this sort of wrapping casts a bit of a shadow. and a little bit of form stuff going on, but not a lot. That's going to be developed as we work on those lighter tones. Just want to get a bit more kind of detail into it, what's going on. And then with these letters and the napkin, a lot of what we can do is actually just erasing back in. Again, we're going to be using white paint, white gouache, acrylic to heighten some of these bits later, so they're going to go brighter than they are at the moment. But we can get them started just kind of laying in the shapes really primarily. So again, we can do the same thing with this plate, just kind of roughly getting in the shapes. A little bit on these napkins as well. We're just about there with it. Again, we've got a little bit of a reflection on this napkin ring, sort of silvery napkin ring, which we can start to suggest. And blocking a little bit of a tone for the front of this table, and that's pretty much it in terms of getting everything blocked down. As I say, we'll work a bit on the background next week. Possibly also start to work a little bit in paint next week, just so we get a feel for how light some tones are going to go, and then from there we can kind of start to find and refine individual areas. So I'm just erasing those bits of the tablecloth that don't really need to have any tone. Top of the table. not all the way up to those, any edges that are kind of softened where the shadow is, I can kind of leave so that they stay fairly bright. Can just erase a little bit of detail into these knives as well, but they're not too bad, relatively. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. So we've got the left hand side now blocked in, right hand side ready for starting working on our background next week, and then also maybe starting to heighten some sections, kind of like over painting a bit. We'll be able to kind of do charcoal over the painting as well. The whole thing's going to be a mix of different media. So yeah, that's it. As always, you can subscribe to the channel to watch this and loads of other tutorial videos. You can watch the rest of the series, for instance. You can also click the link through to sign up to the OCAD Studio sort of recreational course to get access to tutors like myself and fellow expert tutors. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys next week.